Welcome to this conversation with the nominees in the Immersive Reality Technical Achievement category. This is the 24th annual D.I.C.E Awards. These nominees have pushed the boundaries in a rapidly evolving category, and we want to hear the story directly from the source. But before we do that and ask them how they did it, let's get into some introductions. From Half-Life Alyx, we have Carrie Davis. How are you doing, Carrie?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Awesome. Give the folks a little bit of information about you and what you've done.
I'm a game programmer at Valve. I've been with the company for 16 years. So I've been there just since the end of Half-Life 2. And Half-Life Alyx was really exciting because it was actually the first Half-Life game that I got to ship at Valve. So I finally got to put my fingerprints on a little bit of the Half-Life universe.
That's fantastic. For Mario Kart Live, we have Nate Bildorf. How are you doing, Nate?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. Give the folks at home a little bit of info about yourself as well.
I am the Senior Vice President of Product Development and Publishing at Nintendo of America. Been working there for 20 years. And I'm here representing really a large team, not only the members of the team in Japan who worked on this product, but also the members of Villain Studios.
And from Museum of Other Realities, we have Robin Stetham. How are you doing, Robin?
Doing well, thanks. Yeah, I'm the CEO of the Museum of Other Realities. One half of the founding team, the other half is Colin Northway. I was an industrial designer before this, but yeah, we're a small team of around 6 people, all very talented, and I'm really happy to be able to represent them among such luminaries today.
Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us today. From Paper Beast, we have Eric Chai. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Give the folks at home a little bit of info about yourself as well.
Yeah, so I'm the game designer of Paper Beast and also the president of Pixel Reef, which is the company that support Paper Beast. And we are a team of 12 people. And I've been creating games since almost 30 years now.
Wow.
And I've created games like Another World, Heart of Darkness, From Dust. And so I'm very happy to be here with you.
Fantastic, fantastic. And rounding out our group from Tempest, we have Samantha Gorman. How are you doing, Samantha?
I'm doing well, thank you. I am the co-lead of Studio Tenderclaws with Danny Cannizaro. We're about 15 people, and we've done previous VR games like Virtual Reality and The Under Presents. And I am the primary narrative lead and director, so I work with a lot of the actors.
Thank you all so much for being here and hanging out with us here at the D.I.C.E Awards. Excited to jump into the conversation. And again, you know, this is going to be super cool because I love IR stuff. I love being able to talk to folks who are working in this particular field. What are some of your favorite kind of aspects of developing in VR? I'm sorry, in IR. How has your creative process evolved most when comparing it to a kind of a traditional game? I kind of want to start off with you, Samantha, on that conversation. What's been the changes that you've had to kind of go through to bridge that gap between, you know, the traditional game and spaces in the IR space?
Yeah, actually, in my case, it's particularly interesting because I was working in VR since 2002 in a sort of visualization lab called the Cave. So I very much actually think from the ground up in terms of developing for the, you know, spatial arena of VR and design for multiple dimensions. And sort of coming from a theater background, it's also this idea of like the mise en scene and staging. So very much we actually were VR first, and now we're actually also working on 2D games as well.
That's fantastic. You know, Tempest definitely shows that off in lots of different ways with, you know, thinking about it from the VR perspective first. Paper Beast is also in that space as well, Eric. I feel like you have a very specific kind of way that you've kind of tackled the game that you've made. What has been some of the conversations that you've all had in terms of, you know, comparing the game that you've done to a traditional one?
Well, I worked on two games. Well, one was not a game; it was a volcanic simulation, and the second one was a Paper Beast. And what I love with VR is the interaction with physics system, because there is something very believable in VR, the feeling of the space and be able to touch things. So I don't know how much I should go in the simulation stuff or not, but it's really something that I wanted to put in highlight in a paper Beast, and especially about the wildlife and how the player can be connected to the wildlife and play with simulated wildlife.
That's fantastic. It definitely comes through in the way that you interact with everything, and the way you kind of, the way that the animals move and kind of animate in that way. It definitely does come through very much so that have been very thoughtful about the way that works in that space. I'm really curious to hear about your thoughts from this about this, Robin, because of the way your experience works, and you kind of having that kind of slow, methodical way that you kind of have built the world. What are your thoughts about the creative process when you were thinking about doing this project?
Well, as you say, it's been extremely iterative, and I mean, I think one of the most important things that we do is just work really closely with all the creators we showcase. Mm-hmm. So it's been a kind of a journey of figuring out how to best showcase and interact with the sort of limitless new types of content that are always being created, and that's been, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges, but also the biggest draw for me is just being able to work with such a diverse cast of creators and also types of media.
Yeah, it's beautiful the way you've tackled that, and it does kind of come through very much so that the connection between you all from the team and the folks that you've kind of showcased within the game, that those conversations have happened often, and that you're having a lot of the kind of how do we best show this off in the way that kind of gives the work the best light, which I've loved. For Carrie and Nate, I think the games that you both have made have the kind of most direct connection or analog to the kind of more traditional game space in some of the things you've done with Mario Kart and Half-Life Alyx. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about what that process looks like as well. Kind of adding this, making this experience very, very singular and different compared to what a kind of traditional version of it might have been. Nate, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this as well.
Well, yeah, I think everybody's probably played a Mario Kart game in their life, and I certainly have put a lot of hours in myself. And honestly, I think the biggest challenge for the teams was to make driving a remote control car as fun as driving a video game car. I played with remote control cars when I was a kid, and I would frequently just crash them. And having an actual race on them was a real challenge. And so the ability of the teams to put in mixed reality elements to really bring that experience to life, a video game experience to life in a very mundane setting, in your kitchen or wherever you set it up, I think was the focus from the start. And I think they just did a fantastic job of pulling it off.
Yeah. Carrie, how's the process evolved for you as well in terms of Half-Life Alyx?
Yeah, I was knowing that we were making another Half-Life game that people had been waiting for some time. We were constantly asking ourselves, does this need to be in VR? Why are we making this a VR game? What makes it special to be in VR? So we were continually focusing on how to make the platform suitable for the game and how to make the game something that you could only experience in VR. So I think the platform was really great for driving a lot of creative decisions that they've been making first-person shooters on flat screen games for years, and sort of having new challenges to solve really gets the team, creatively energized, which I think shows in the final product.
Yeah, it definitely does come through in ways where, having played it, you're just like, I don't know if this would have worked any other way. And it feels like those connective tissues are absolutely there. And it makes me think a lot about, Samantha, in your experience, where I, as a big fan of, things like Sleep No More and experiences like that, having gone and experienced that in real life and had a blast with it. Tempest is described as this kind of theater event in VR. And what can you kind of tell us about the design process around that and how you kind of be able to kind of bring players together and guide them in such an open experience? And, how should we think about this game in that way?
Yeah, actually, the thing you allude to in sort of gently nudging players for connection and developing intimacy with, an anonymous multiplayer and with other actors is actually one of the most important design principles and pillars for us. The whole process actually was based on 2 years of kind of trial and error and working through the Underpresents with Piehole, which is a New York-based sort of experiential theater troupe. So there was in the design from the ground up, everything from the actor interface to how to actually think about modeling immersive theater behavior and anonymous multiplayer was actually baked into kind of the DNA of the experience. And there were a lot of learnings from working with the actors live over the year, so that when we got to Tempest, we kind of had this idea of how you assign roles and how you make players feel like they're being seen and they have identities, even within their anonymous, roles, and that they're part of a community all working towards like staging a greater whole. So I think, that was important for us. And in VR, the element of physicality and the element of sort of being present with each other, I think is something that is really unique to the medium and how we were able to use it.
Yeah, I mean, you've nailed that part. That part is brilliant. I'm kind of thinking about it from all of yours perspective, kind of working in this space. Carrie kind of talked about it a little bit about, certain things working very, very well in VR and kind of being really, connected to that experience in that way. When you are thinking about the games in terms of not only the process of building it out and speccing it out and trying to figure out from a conceptual standpoint, what was going to work in that way. Who else kind of had that experience where you had that kind of aha moment in the kind of conceptual phase of like, oh, this particular part of the game is going to work really well in this medium? Who had that kind of like aha moment when it kind of came to getting it in that space? Anybody can take that. Anyone can jump in on that one.
I think one of the biggest things that clicked was really a very simple thing, which is that the perspective shift of suddenly having a camera at ground level was really sort of something that just changed things, because it's very, very simple. Of course, it's your kitchen floor, you've seen it a zillion times, but when you're driving around on it and the family dog comes rolling in and decides to stomp across the course, that certainly changes things. And I think that sort of experience meshed with the mixed reality elements that the team was working on. Really, we could tell that there was going to be something very, very special about that, and something very, very unique for everybody who played it. So that was our experience.
Yeah, Robin, looked like you wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, sorry, there's a little bit of noise in the background right now, but so originally we didn't actually intend for the more to be multiplayer, and we didn't intend for it to feature art. It was going to be a collection of like 4 or 5 executables that we would release quarterly. But what happened is the very first one we ever did, we included a friend's multiplayer SDK, normal. And we kind of did it on a whim at the last minute. And so then we had these 4 doors that went to 4 experiences, and they were just in a white room. So we were like, well, maybe we should put something in here. We got like the 3 pieces of tilt brush art we could find at the time. And we put them in this room, and it was networked. And it's, funnily enough, it turned out that people liked standing outside the doors with their friends amidst the art as much or more than they liked the experiences. And so I guess that insight kind of led us down the path we are walking now. But that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't just tried it, at the last minute and had that sort of result. So it was an interesting insight for us.
Was it the kind of understanding around, what people like when they go to a museum in the physical realm? Or what was the kind of biggest hurdle that you had to kind of or most difficult part of kind of making sure that curating an online virtual museum was interesting or fun for the player, or that they would have a good time in that experience?
Well, I think we're really fortunate in that we've been able to be really iterative, but I think time and again we found that our first, and I think this happens a lot in VR, but our first sort of idea turns out to be totally wrong or backwards, and it's only in trying it that you realize that. But yeah, it's pretty much trial and error. But if we hadn't had those trials and those errors, then we'd be in a totally different place. It's just part of the process that I really enjoy, even if there is some challenge there.
Try and try again, huh? That's the way to make it work, huh? I mean, it's really cool to see that was a part of the, of course it's a part of most of the kind of game development process, but having that extra wrinkle kind of be in the space is even more interesting to see how you tackled that. Eric, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts as well about, how it was, coming up and conceiving the ideas around Paper Beast and this mind-bending reality with so many kind of unexpected turns and systems and all those ways you've kind of built that together. I'd love to hear more thoughts around that as well.
Yeah, this game is absolutely crazy of what we start because the creation of this game is partly improvisational. And the core idea was to create a game about wildlife and with a physical simulation, but there was not yet this idea of paper and data. And but as much as we create the simulation system, we decided to use a paper look for the creature, because in VR there is some performance issue that you have to take. You have really to take care of this, and because all the creatures are made of bones, and it was very interesting to have an origami look for each leg and each part of the neck and the head, etc. And that idea of having a creature made of paper collide with another idea. You have sometimes many ideas in your head, and suddenly it crystallizes into something. And one of the ideas was the thematic of the data. And suddenly, oh yes, okay, we can speak about wildlife, but in a world that emerge from the data. So we will be on the edge of the artificial and the natural. And it's all the craziness of this game is exactly on this edge. And it leads us to create a very surrealistic world. And once the system were almost ready, we worked on the first level, and then we continue level after level to create the game, and it brings us a lot of consistency and coherence about the creation of a universe. Because, yeah, and the important thing I should say about this world, because everything is made of physics. Right. The ground can be shaped, and the water flows, and there is the wind, and the creature can be blown away by the wind. They can resist, they can slip over the ground. And the physics, we use it not only for the creature, but also to bring very surrealistic moment, like a storm of paper, a bridge in the sky with letter flowing, and this universe has a logic, and the joys of the physics help us to sorry, my English is outrageous.
No, it's totally fine.
It glue everything.
Got you. Okay. I mean, I love the point that you made about the, balancing the digital with, with the physical in that space. And I think, Samantha, the question I had for you about that is, you're building out and have this world where you're mashing up, not only this digital performance that is sometimes, powered by other humans in the world. Um, what does that conversation look like in your head, and what have been some of the interactions that you've had in this space that you couldn't really replicate in a live theater experience?
Could you repeat the question? It's sort of like the digital physical element and how that might contribute
Like
to things.
what were some of the kind of crazy interactions that you were kind of able to see and witness during during these mashups of the kind of live and digital aspects of the performances, and some of that stuff you couldn't really do in a live theater setting? What were some of the ones that you kind of can share?
Yeah, for us, it's a lot about media specificity. So there's obviously things that you can do in a simulated environment that aren't replicatable in real life, whether physics or even the way that bodies can be modified and perspectives can shift. So, one of the things we use in VR has a really beautiful interplay with scale, right? As like a kind of foundational element of the medium. So one of the techniques we use is sort of a switch of scale and perspective for the actors. So actors have a very elaborate interface. Some of the things they can do in a moment's notice is kind of shrink or grow their bodies. Where suddenly you could be surrounded by players as a tiny miniature, on the ground, and everyone's like, there's sometimes even in Tempest, there's spells, and they're giving you objects and you're like pantomiming with the objects and, partially improvising off them. And then the next moment you're like giant hovering over them. And that kind of, you can see from the body language of the players, like just like how that like freaks, that messes with your mind and how it completely changes the relationship and the dynamics of the scene that's happening. And that's a short example of something that you couldn't replicate in like the real world.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about what those experiences are that the kind of replicate or are so different than their real life counterparts. I think, Robin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, again, I think to your point, scale is really important, and I think one of the super unique things about VR that you don't get in any other digital medium is that it's stereo, and something so simple can actually be really powerful when it comes to scale. We also have the ability to shrink and grow. We have these drinks and then certain landscapes or dioramas you can jump down into. But I think the effect is really powerful because you do have this sense that you are, just a tiny person in a massive landscape or standing in someone's hand. And I think that, again, these are things you can't easily do in real life, and you wouldn't even think to try and do. So, we're kind of discovering all the time. Everyone in the industry is discovering all the time, things we hadn't even thought of that turn out to be really, really interesting sort of interaction vectors. And I think that it just goes to show how young the medium is and how much more there is to learn there. It's very exciting.
I mean, it makes me think of experiences that I can't have in any other place, like Mario Kart Live in an interesting way too, right? Where augmented racing is now a thing. To a certain extent, it feels like you maybe even have made that a new thing. What were some of the kind of biggest challenges you found in that space too, where now you have to drive around the legs of cats in very small those kinds of things?
Well, and at least it got me to make couch forts again. I hadn't done that since I was 8 years old, but being able to play around with furniture to create interesting areas for cars to drive was certainly a lot of fun. I think the main challenge was anchoring the AR elements, of course, to a real world setting. And I think that Valen and Nintendo really did a great job of using not only the gates, which of course are the anchor points for where you're driving, but also the paint of laying out the track the first time that you drove through it to then subsequently become your virtual track. I remember the first time we saw that in action, sort of the paint slopping all over your cart and then leaving this trail through your real world house. I don't know, it just brought the entire experience home to me. And I think, you know, it's playful, but it's also serves a very, very technical purpose. And you know, that's where the fun is.
It's very, very cool to kind of think back on where we started in terms of this medium and where we've gotten to now. To see just how far we've come in such a small amount of time has been pretty brilliant. And you all made some fantastic games. And now I get the pleasure of giving out an award, our 24th annual D.I.C.E Award for Interactive Reality Technical Achievement. So the winner of our award for this year goes to Half-Life Alyx. Congratulations. Congrats, congrats, congrats. Awesome, awesome, awesome.
Thank you.
Carrie, do you have any
Thank you
words
very much.
for the folks at home?
Well, geez, it's an honor. You know, we put a lot of time and effort and love into this game, just like all game devs do, and you never know until it's done if it's really going to be something that people are receptive to. So we're just super thrilled that people enjoyed playing it, and that we were able to produce something of really high quality. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank all of you for, again, you know, putting so much care and love into the work that you've done. I think the experiences that you've brought to the world are so unique and beautiful and fantastic, and it's really cool to be able to have kind of dug through some of them before the show and get a chance to dig into some more after. So again, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us here at D.I.C.E, and we hope to have you all back here very, very soon. So much love to you all, and thank you so much.